Guys, and welcome back. I'm Rachel O'Leary and I'm getting a little impatient. Oh, and pardon the glove, I shut my finger in the greenhouse door yesterday, so I'm trying to keep things clean. The soil is not mixing as quickly as I'd like. It's starting to waterlog, but it's still pretty dry. So what I'm going to do is add it to the Bog Garden and then cover it with some plastic liner and see if that doesn't accelerate things a bit. So I'm going to do 2 parts peat to 1 part sand. I'm just going to do it by the bucketful and add it into the garden, stir it up a bit. Let me show you my materials real quick and the inside of the Bog Garden, tell you a few little tidbits, and we'll get to work. So you can see the peat is starting to saturate, but if we disrupt the surface, it's still pretty dry inside. Also, there's a lot of various wood debris in there that I'm going to have to sift out as I go. But it's already been a day and a half and I'm just feeling really impatient. I need to get this project going. So I'm thinking if I add it into there, cover it with some plastic, the humidity and warmth will help it saturate a little bit quicker. We'll see. It could be a big mistake, but I feel like I need to be doing something, so we're going to do it. This is my coarse blasting sand. It is Black Beauty or Black Diamond blasting sand. I like it. It helps prevent the soil from compacting way too hard. You could also use something like straight up perlite. Some people, I mean, there's various things that people use. I think the easiest thing to do is mix the peat with the sand, again in the 2-to-1 ratio, and just fill things up. So let's get started. Oh, I wanted to show you, I put just a spattering of lava rock in here. And again, I'm hoping that's going to help a little bit with compaction. You know, it's not likely that this amount of lava rock will really do that much, but it won't hurt either. My silicone is fully cured at this point. I double checked all my PVC slip fits to make sure they were nice and tight. And I'm just going to start tossing substrate in here, mixing as we go with my trusty shop broom, because why not? Now I just have a little 1-gallon bucket that'll make it relatively easy to collect my materials and mix them in at least what's a close enough ratio. So I'm going to sprinkle a bucket of peat. Grab a bucket of sand. Grab a bucket of peat, grab a bucket of sand, rinse and repeat. This doesn't have to be, oh yuck. As you can see, the peat in the bottom of the barrel is way more saturated, which is good. But it's certainly not evenly mixed, and that's what the goal is. Oh, that's disgusting. Sounds like manure hitting that. So all I'm doing is alternating every couple buckets between peat and sand, and then taking my hand and roughly mixing it together so that the soil is a good mix of the sand and the peat. You can see it sticks together, but it doesn't get super compacted, and that's what's important here. So I'm just going to keep doing so. And it's actually a bit moister than I thought. Again, you can see it's holding moisture, but it's not super compacted, which is what we want. Let me show you guys a close-up of the mix. You can see it's pretty saturated and mainly peat, but definitely has some sand too. And I'm just going to keep filling until it's full enough, then hose it down and cover it with some liner. Now it's about full enough for now, but I need to really wet it down and make sure it doesn't settle too much. So I'm just going to give it a good soaking. Going to give it a good slow soaking and let it continue to absorb all this water. And if it settles more, I have another 3 cubic yards of the peat and plenty of sand to make more mix. In fact, I might start a new mix in my trash can just to be on the safe side. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are curious as to what I'm going to be doing with the top bin, and that will get its own series as well. And we'll give it a good soaking through our standpipe too. This way I can wet the mixture from the top and the bottom, and hopefully this will help get things ready so we'll be able to plant next week. Now you can see from filling with that standpipe the water pooling on the surface, and that's the level of the water throughout the whole bog. So I'm just going to let this sit and saturate and keep checking this standpipe to make sure that the water's staying at that level. Not sure if you guys are going to be able to see or not. But if you look down this standpipe, you can see the water level at the bottom. That tells us how high it is within the bog. It's pretty cool. Now heading into the greenhouse, it's very warm in here. I actually have the door propped open right now in order to cool off a bit. I had opened these vents back up, but I think it was preventing the bins from retaining their warmth overnight. I've been taking measurements on the bins with an infrared thermometer every morning, and they've been hanging out in the low 50s in the morning. And the top row is getting to the mid-80s during the day, the bottom row the mid-70s during the day. And if this trend continues for the next several days, I'll know that it's plenty warm enough to move out fish. Now, I have moved out snails, and I did this just to sort of test the waters. You can see a little trapdoor snail there. And I moved out some apple snails as well, just one per tub. In order to just see if they were active or not. You can see that dude there is being active. That dude back there. And each of these tubs is also seeded with Daphne. And as you can see, they already have a lot of plants. And actually, there's a mosquito larva starting on that plant leaf. So it'll be good to get fish out here soon. But everything is going pretty well. Now this is my carnivorous plant stash. You can see some of them are throwing flowers already, which is really exciting. Some of them are just starting to come back and grow. Some of them are looking really great, some of them not so much. This one's taking its sweet old time, but you can see there's still green in here. So I know it's alive, it's just not waking up as quickly as some of the others. Whereas like this one, you can see all these new pitchers forming. This one, again, it's still a bit green, but it's taking its time. It's just a slower species. This one has a bunch of new pitchers. This one has a ton of pitchers. This was a gift from my friend Nick. This one has a bunch of pitchers. This one has a giant flower stalk here. You can see how big some of the pitchers on this one are already. All of this was cut back during the season. I also have some sundews that I'm going to plant. So I think what I'm going to do is take some of these smaller plants and a couple of the larger ones next week and plant them in the bog garden and really see how they do. I'll also add some Venus flytraps, and I have some live sphagnum moss coming as well to add to that. And I think it's going to be really cool. I also got these tubs set up. The center one is filled. The left and the right still need to be filled. There's no plants or anything in them yet. We had snow 2 days ago, so I'm waiting to make sure that that thread is absolutely passed as my daffodils bloom right there before I move out plants into these bins, since they're accustomed to the greenhouse temperatures. So this is the mess I've made. As always, it's a pretty epic one, but I'm hopeful that we'll be able to plant in this bog garden in this bottom part sooner rather than later. Now, I know some of you had concerns about drainage, and I didn't really show you very closely, but I left little gaps in the pond liner, like ripples almost, that I didn't glue, so that if the water levels get too high, the water can go behind that pond liner and seep out through the holes and gravel in the bottom. I think it should work fine. And I also do plan to plant the top surface of this bog garden with live moss, which will also help retain the integrity of the soil. But again, I'm winging this, so we'll have to see how it goes. As always, thank you guys for your continued support of all my messes, abstract creativity, and fish geekadry. Stay tuned to see what I'm going to do with this one. I will tell you it will involve my family. So guys, I figured since the weather was so great, I would take the opportunity to plant these things as well for you guys. So I pulled out most of my carnivorous plants, starting to place them around, and I'm just going to get them in the soil and see how they do. I'm going to leave the two largest pots in their pots and just put them in a tray for this year because they've already thrown flowers and I don't want to disrupt them. I want to see them flower. But a lot of these littler guys are still a few years out from reaching that maturity, so I'm going to get them into my bog garden so that they have the chance to reach maturity quicker. So let's get started. What I'm trying to do here is place some of the bigger plants towards the back, or at least the fuller ones. I have some scissors with me. To sort of take care of the dead pitchers. I'm going to get rid of the soil that they're in, trim them up a bit, and then just get them in the dirt. A few of them I may be able to split as well, but we will see. I was worried if I kept them in the greenhouse too much longer that they would start to mold because it's getting so humid in there, which is an issue with carnivorous plants kept inside. And this one now I can see does have new pitchers growing, which is good. Now I'm going to leave any pitchers that are mostly green just so that they can feed the plants. But remove any that are obviously dead. And you just cut them right back at the base of the plant. Sometimes you can even just snap them off. And this way, wasted nutrition's not going to the plant to try and maintain these pitchers. Now I think that by getting these outside, they're going to start growing way quicker, but we'll have to see. Most of these I did trim back over the winter as the pitchers died. In general, you leave any pitchers that are mostly healthy. So I've got a lot of Sarracenias, a few Venus Flytraps, some Rubras, and you can see this one's from a nursery. You can tell that they just stuck a plug of peat into a pot of soil, which is not super awesome for this plant, so it's probably really good that I'm getting it out of that potting mix and into a better soil mix for it. Now I am trying to remove most of the potting mix that came from the nursery in order for it to be able to spread its root and really take root in my soil mix. It looks like they used simple long fiber sphagnum, which is fine, but the way that it was just a plug in the middle of the pot is not super awesome. Now a lot of these have little labels as to what they are, which I'm going to leave with them. But again, I'm going to get rid of all this old soil. This is really compacted. Now eventually all of these plants will get way too big for my little bog garden here, but I hope to expand my efforts. This is really an experiment to see how it goes, so we'll learn together. There's peanut shells in this one. This one's been a bit slower to come back to life, so I'm hoping that getting it out here is going to really help it jumpstart its growth. But we'll have to see. Now, some of my pots are mixed pots, which means I'm going to separate the plants as I take them out. And some of them have live mosses growing on top, which I'm going to set aside to be able to plant between the plants. As I mentioned earlier, I do have some live sphagnum coming as well, which I'll plant at the surface to sort of hold the soil in place. I think that should be here in a few days. This one I can probably split. It looks pretty big. It also, if we look too, it also appears to have some little orchids growing with it, which sort of excites me, so I'm going to try and preserve those as well. Bog orchids give out little tiny delicate flowers that are really pretty gorgeous. And I'd love to get my hands on some more, I'm just not sure where to get them. You can see the intense root structure that this particular plant has. Usually you can split them between each of these knuckles, just sort of like you would with an Anubias, where you just sort of pop them like that. And then I have a new plantlet. And you want to do this kind of stuff at the start of the growing season, ideally, rather than when they're in their full growth pattern. That little orchid. See, so I'm going to make 3 plants out of this one. I could probably do 4, but I'm going to leave some of them a little bit larger. I'll plant them in a little grouping here. Plant this little orchid right in the front here and hope that it survives. I'm going to leave this moss around the base of my standpipe here, see what happens there. Now this one also has multiple species that I'm going to try and separate, including a little ping, which we'll put towards the front. More of this live moss, which will also stick up here. I'm just going to go ahead and plant all these, and then I'll show you guys the results. So I got all the plants planted and they look awesome, but it happens to be pouring down rain right now. Now the forecast was for sunny and 80, so I guess Mother Nature just doesn't like me that much this spring. But as soon as there's a break in the rain, I'll take you guys out there to show you the results. I'm pretty excited about it. And I do know that this garden is overcrowded in the long run. But since so many of my plants are so young, I think it's going to work out really great for the next year or two. At which point I can split the plants, share them with some other people, or even create another bigger in-ground bog garden. I'm just really excited to get started with all this stuff. And I'm excited to start the second tier of the project. I have a bunch of materials coming in this week, so look forward to that next week. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of these upcoming videos. I'm hoping that this weekend we'll be able to start moving out fish, which I know all of you are super excited about, but I don't think anyone is more excited than me. So stay tuned. So this is the Bog Garden. You can see all the little plants in there. I had a bit more of the live moss than I thought, so I sort of stuck that around here and there. As I mentioned, I do have a bunch of live moss coming in that I'm going to be adding in between all these plants, and that just helps with the soil integrity at the surface, as well as preventing from drying out. For now, I just have my other ones that haven't been planted yet up here in, it's actually a tray for a hot water heater, but it works really well for shallow bog gardens, at least for the spring through fall. And I've moved out some of my other plants to get a nice drink because the risk of freeze is supposedly gone. So we'll see. I'm pretty excited about all of this.